All right, so are you ready to dive into another cold case with me?
Always.
This one is pretty baffling and heartbreaking. It's the story of Paul Logan. He was a 25-year-old takeaway driver from Black Hill County, Durham,
Oh, wow.
and he was found murdered on Christmas Eve, 1993.
On Christmas Eve.
Yeah, so we're talking 30 years. The killer's still out there, and we're going to try to make sense of this whole thing using two recent news articles about it.
Okay.
What makes it even more tragic is that he was a father of two young children. So we're not just dealing with like a mystery here. We're
Yeah.
talking about the lasting impact of this brutal crime, on a family and a community.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that's so fascinating about this case is all these different twists and turns.
Yeah.
It starts with what seems like just a normal delivery call,
Okay.
to Blue House Farm on December 23rd.
Right.
But when he gets there, there's no order waiting.
Yeah. And that's where things get really weird. His car is later spotted parked near the farm, but he's nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
And they don't find his body until the early hours of Christmas Eve, just yards from his car.
Oh, wow. So he was led there, basically.
It seems like it, right?
Yeah.
And the cause of death was fatal head wounds,
Oh, God.
which were inflicted by a blunt instrument which was never recovered.
That's interesting.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And then you add on to that the delivery call was a hoax made from a public phone box.
Wow.
So this wasn't just some random act of violence, this was premeditated. Someone wanted him to go to that isolated location.
Right. Yeah. Someone planned this out.
Yeah. So it leads us to the big question, why?
Yeah. What was the motive?
What was the motive? Because robbery seems unlikely since nothing was taken from him or his car.
Yeah.
So was this a targeted attack? Was it personal? Was he caught in something much bigger?
Right. Like maybe he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, or did somebody have it out for him?
Right.
Yeah.
So to try to figure that out, we need to kind of look at some of the other weird things that happened before the murder. His car was vandalized a bunch of times in the weeks leading up to it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it wasn't just like your typical keying or slashed tires.
Okay.
One of the incidents that stands out is that the words "no legs" were scratched onto the roof of his car.
No legs. That's so creepy.
It's creepy, right?
Yeah, that's not just vandalism. That's a message.
It's definitely a message. Like, what do you make of that?
It could be a threat. It could be a warning. It could be them just trying to taunt him.
Right.
It's almost like they wanted to, sort of like leave their mark, like make it known that they were involved in this.
Yeah.
But the question is, was this a message just for him, or was it meant for a bigger audience?
Right. So then you add, on top of that, there's this guy, Keith Suddick, and he was arrested in 1999 for vandalizing Paul's father's van. So this might seem random,
Right.
but Suddick was connected to some pretty bad people.
Okay, so he wasn't just like a random vandal.
No, he was connected to some like organized crime figures in Tyneside.
Ooh, like mob stuff.
Yeah. And one of the figures he was connected to was Viv Graham,
Viv Graham.
who was a notorious gangster, and he was coincidentally murdered on New Year's Eve, 1993,
Oh, wow.
just a week after Paul.
So like a week after Paul Logan is murdered, this mobster that this vandal's connected to also turns up dead.
Exactly.
The timing is too close for comfort.
It's hard not to think that they're connected.
Yeah, do you think that he saw something or knew something that he shouldn't have known?
Maybe, right? Maybe he witnessed something related to Graham's murder, and that put him in a bad spot.
Yeah, it's totally possible.
And, organized crime, that world is very hush-hush.
Right, a lot of secrets,
Yeah, and witnesses disappear all the time.
of course,
And those who speak up, face some pretty serious consequences.
for sure.
So we're left with this puzzle.
Yeah,
A young man lured to his death, a cryptic message, and this possible link to organized crime.
yeah.
It's a story that has haunted investigators and his family for 3 decades.
It's crazy that it's gone unsolved for so long.
Yeah.
And I think it reminds us that sometimes no matter how hard people try to find out the truth, some cases just stay in the shadows.
Yeah.
But there's always hope, that something will come up, someone will say something, new information will come out, and justice will happen,
Right.
even if it takes a long time.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about how cold cases like this are handled these days.
Oh.
I know from all the true crime stuff I watch that police procedures have changed so much, especially with like DNA technology now.
Oh, absolutely. Like cases that might have seemed like a dead end 30 years ago can be totally re-examined with all these new techniques.
Right.
DNA has gotten so advanced, like
Yeah.
even the tiniest little trace of blood or saliva that they might have missed back then could be like the key to figuring out who did it.
So it's not even just about new evidence. It's about reanalyzing old evidence with a fresh perspective and all this new technology.
Exactly. And it's not even just DNA. Think about digital forensics.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that hoax phone call from the phone box?
Yeah.
They might be able to pull data from cell towers or phone records.
Yeah.
It's like finding a needle in a haystack. But now the haystack is a lot smaller.
Right. Yeah. Technology has come a long way.
It really has.
It's kind of crazy to think that something that seemed so insignificant back then could be huge now.
Right.
Like, it gives me chills thinking about it.
Yeah. And that hope is what keeps investigators going.
Yeah.
And it's what keeps families going, too.
Right. Like, how do they do
Yeah.
it to keep fighting for justice for 30 years, and just never giving up hope?
It's incredible.
And his partner, Pamela, and their kids, Natalie and Michael, they've been really vocal about keeping his memory alive and trying to find answers.
Right.
Natalie, who was just a baby when this happened, she actually made a public appeal for information on the 25th anniversary of his death.
Oh, wow.
Which is just so sad to think about, that his absence is still affecting their lives so much.
It's a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
It's not something you just get over.
And Paul's parents, Elsie and Hugh, unfortunately, they passed away without ever getting justice for their son.
Oh, that's so sad.
I know, but they never stopped fighting for him.
Really?
Yeah, and they even offered a reward which started at £10,000, and then they increased it to £50,000.
Wow.
So, that really shows how much they loved him and how badly they wanted to see his killer caught.
It's just heartbreaking to think that they never got closure.
Yeah, it's just awful.
It makes you realize that an unsolved murder, it's not just about catching the killer.
Right.
It's about giving the family some peace.
Right, some closure.
Exactly.
To think about the mental toll that this takes on people, like, to live with that uncertainty for years and years.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so that's where the public comes in.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times the key to solving a cold case is just one person coming forward with information.
Right. Someone who maybe thought what they saw or heard wasn't that important.
Exactly. Like, maybe they saw something near Blue House Farm that night, but didn't think anything of it at the time.
Yeah. Or maybe they've heard rumors over the years. That could be helpful.
Yeah, like even the smallest thing could be huge.
Exactly. You never know what little detail could crack the case wide open.
It's like those crime shows where someone suddenly remembers something years later, like a license plate number or a tattoo or, just a snippet of conversation that they overheard.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
And it changes everything.
Yeah. Those little memories can be game changers.
Right. Absolutely. And the police have been really thorough in their investigation.
Okay, good.
They've interviewed something like 2,000 people.
What?
They've taken almost 1,000 statements.
That's a lot.
And they've pursued like 1,800 different leads.
It's amazing that they're still putting in so much effort.
Right, and it shows that they haven't given up.
It gives you hope.
Yeah. Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into this case, let's put on our detective hats for a minute.
All right, let's do it.
And see if we can piece together what we know.
Okay.
So we've got a hoax call.
Right.
A murder weapon that's never been found.
Uh-huh.
A creepy message on the car.
Yeah.
And a possible organized crime action.
Right. So many pieces to this.
So many, right. Like, how do they all fit together?
Yeah, it's the question, isn't it?
Yeah, like, why was he killed?
Right. Was it something specific or was he just in the wrong place at the wrong time?
Right.
Like, what about that message?
Yeah, no legs.
It's so creepy.
It's super creepy.
You think it was a clue?
Maybe, right? Or like a taunt.
Yeah, like the killer wanted to mess with people?
Yeah, or maybe a warning about something Paul knew.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was just to throw everyone off.
Right, a red herring.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there's the Suddick guy and the mob connection.
Right, what if he got mixed up in something he shouldn't have?
Right, and then that mob boss is killed a week later.
It can't just be a coincidence.
No way. And those guys don't mess around.
No, they don't. They silence people.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what if Call knew something about the boss's death?
And they had to shut him up.
It's possible.
It's scary to think about.
It is, and without a clear motive, it's hard to know where to even start.
Yeah, it's like a puzzle with missing pieces.
Exactly.
But one thing's for sure, this whole thing has devastated his family and the community.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Imagine his kids growing up without their dad.
No, it's just heartbreaking.
And his partner losing her soulmate.
Awful.
And his parents never getting any answers.
I know, it's just terrible.
But it's amazing how they've stayed strong and kept fighting for justice.
It really is inspiring.
And that's where our listeners come in.
Right.
You've heard all the details. Now it's time to think.
Yeah, what stands out to you?
What theories do you have?
Right. Maybe you remember something.
Anything at all, even if you think it's not important.
Yeah, a conversation, a car, a person, anything.
Because it could be the missing piece.
Right.
So please, if you have any information, call the Northumbria police.
It could finally give Paul's family some peace.
And bring his killer to justice.
After all these years.
30 years is a long time to live with this kind of mystery.
It really is.
So let's keep his story alive and never give up hope.
Right. And to all our listeners who are into true crime, keep researching this case.
Yeah.
Come up with your own theories.
And share your thoughts.
Right. This is a story that needs to be told.
And the truth needs to come out.
Absolutely.